Hello my friends, I'm Indie Pride and welcome to the Realm of Mirkwood. Here, 4,000 Silvan Elves led by the Sindar King Thranduil make their stand against 12,000 Uruks, Orcs, Trolls, Wargs, and Black Numenorians. This is 3rd Age Reforged, created by Synn in the Dark Cloud and Kurogoro-chan, a multiplayer-focused submod for 3rd Age 3.2, introducing many new units, custom scenarios, and battle maps for the wildly popular Medieval 2 mod. Now you guys know that I'm a Warhammer guy. Over the last year that has been one of my main focuses as a YouTube content creator, but it's important to remember that universes like Warhammer would not exist without the Silmarillion or Lord of the Rings and Tolkien's outstanding fantasy writing, and if we're being honest, I think many would agree that 3rd Age is one of the greatest Total War mods ever created, if not the greatest. So being able to bring you all a custom scenario like this is something pretty special, I think. So basically, strap in, ladies and gentlemen, because when there are 16,000 troops on the field, you know things are gonna get crazy. So we've got 3 Gundabad Orc armies attacking the borders of Mirkwood today. Black Uruks, thousands of Orc Fellers and Maulers, Snow Trolls, Halberdiers, and Witch King Hammer Guard comprise their ranks. But the army of Mordor has something a little bit more sinister. We've got the Olaghai, those super heavy shock troops used to break up enemy formations, a Troll Catapult, Sauron's Will Shock Infantry, and the Black Numenorians, led by the 7th of the Nazgul, the Quiet Wraith. If the Ring Wraith falls, the game ends. If Thranduil falls, the game ends. So keeping generals alive in this game will be very important. Over on this side of the battlefield, the Elves have another 3,000 angry Gundabad Orcs to contend with, and some Wargs as well. But breaching that choke point is going to be very difficult. Not much room to maneuver, and some pretty brutal firing angles for the Woodland Sentinels up top to rain down fire from above. Sindar Blademaster is waiting to ambush any Orcs who manage to bust through that shield wall, which will not be an easy feat in and of itself. We've also got some Elder Royal Council and Elven King's Guard behind the infantry, supporting with that devastating range firepower that make the Elves so powerful in 3rd Age. So yes, we are outnumbered 3-1, but we have great defensive positions across the line and superior troops as well. Now, speaking of superior troops, the Elder Pathfinder Elk Cavalry are ridiculous. They look amazing too. You might recognize that model. It was actually used with permission from the beginning of the End Times Warhammer mod, but it's actually from another game that I can't remember off the top of my head. Regardless, they are extremely powerful melee cavalry with a devastating charge bonus, and things are about to get underway. So keeping our elite cavalry alive until the late game is going to be super important in this battle, but we're going to need the killing power of Elder Pathfinders to even get to the late game because we're so outnumbered. So bold moves like this are going to be necessary. Headlong charge into the front of an Uruk halberd wall, and they are not going to brace in time or drop their halberds, and predictably, utter carnage will ensue. Look at that front line of Gundabad scum just hammered into the dirt. Oh, so glorious. And that is what happens if you do not brace or drop your spears in time. You're going to get destroyed by Elven cavalry. So that was a big charge. Really needed that. And then over on this side, I'm going to start making my stand. So Synn in the Dark Cloud is my ally. He'll be up on the hill for the most part, defending against that flank, watching my left-hand side. And in the center, I will be holding it down in a much more threatened position, honestly. I have much less hope of holding down the middle against 2 full armies coming up the center, but I'm going to just try to hold them down, keep them in this choke point as long as possible while our elves fire in from the flanks, hammer them with arrows, and do the ridiculous amount of range damage that the elves are known for. So all of my troops are extremely elite. These spear walls are going to hold very well against thousands upon thousands of Morannon and Gundabad and Mordor Orcs, but this is seriously going to be very difficult, and I have actually purposely left some gaps in my line. And you might say, well, that's really dumb. You don't want to do that, but I actually do. So what's going to happen here is, as they pour through the holes in my line, that's going to allow my more elite troops, like the Sindar Blademasters, to charge in and deal with them in melee combat, as opposed to being stuck behind my own spear walls. But more than that, I'm also going to be able to get really good charges with my Elk Cavalry. So yeah, you can outflank some of my spear units and charge in from behind, but my elves are so elite that they're going to be able to hold out for a very long time. They will not rout. They'll fight to the death, and that will allow my Elder Pathfinders to just slam into any units that manage to break through. So they're honestly isolating themselves from the rest of their army when they try to pull through those holes that are left in the line, and that will allow my cavalry to just utterly decimate them over and over again without much chance for them to be able to respond very well. Now my Elder Royal Council and my Kingsguard up top on that hill have just created a pile of dead already at this choke point, and it's going to be very, very difficult for Capone on that side to break through and get through that choke point. He's committed all of his forces over there, and that's going to be a very difficult choke point with the way I've set up to break through. Now Synn is going to sit up on top of that hill and just hold down the fort over on this side. He has his cavalry and other elite troops ready to deal with any Gundabad Orcs that try to pull around the side. And he has, again, brutal firing angles. All these Woodland Sentinels up top to just shoot down into a bunch of these unarmored units. The Orc Fellers, the Orc Maulers are going to get destroyed as these range units pour into them. Now this is what I'm talking about. You can see some of my swordsmen have made it into combat, holding down, tying down these Gundabad Orcs that pulled through, and that's allowing my Elder Pathfinders to strike at them over and over again, just punish them with powerful charges, but holding the line against snow trolls and thousands, literally thousands of orcs is going to be no easy task. And you can already see these holes have widened since the game began. I have lost some troops, and while the front line of Orc Marauders and Fellers has already been decimated, now the more elite troops are entering melee, the ones that can actually go toe-to-toe with elite Silvan Spearmen. You just saw the Witch Realm Hammer Guard and the Scourge Raiders. They may not beat a shield wall from the front, but they can definitely put a really nice dent into it. And our opponents have been smart thus far, letting the cheap troops take all the fire as the armies closed in, and holding on to most of the elites for once the holes started to open up in the center. So now you're seeing the Uruks, now you're seeing the Trolls, now you're seeing the Ologhai start to enter melee combat and begin to batter through our beleaguered forces. I did have to laugh at this part because Synn will end up doing a great job of supporting me with his cavalry and archer fire from the cliff. But this is one of those classic games where one person is just a meat shield, and that is exactly the role I'm fulfilling right now, except that I'm making the orcs pay for literally every inch of ground they try to cover. But it's only a matter of time. See the troll, catapult, and the orc halberds, and just all these massive forces moving up now. I can reap a terrible toll, but there is no way that 7 or 8 elite units of elves are going to be able to hold back 2 full armies. So this is going to be a brave last stand for these troops right here, but holding down the center is simply not going to be possible when there are this many elite Mordor and Gundabad troops coming in now. The Snow Trolls are deep into melee combat. The Ologhai will be committed soon. One of the only good things right now is that a bunch of the Orc Fellers and Marauders that did manage to pull through are getting run down, just cut like wheat before the scythe over and over again by my Elder Pathfinders. And the fact that I've managed to rack up so many kills with my Cav already, and the fact that his catapults can't really shoot in to my big blobs of infantry. Those are the only 2 saving graces. Other than that, my infantry fight will go bad on that side. Now over here, this choke point is a different story entirely. I think it was weird what my opponent decided to do. He's going to end up, he is using wave tactics, which is a good idea because it means that your meat shields and all the crap troops are going to wear down the front line, and then you commit your elite forces later on. But he has his entire army over on this side. He would have been much better served sending his warg or something to the center, giving him something to do other than just fighting in that one choke point, because he cannot beat me over there just by himself. He should have helped out the center with some of his troops as well, because you can't commit everything at one time. So you might as well send some of your forces over to another part of the battlefield where you can actually help out. So that was kind of weird. But over on this side, Synn is doing a great job holding the hill. I am going to tell him at some point, I don't remember exactly when during the battle, but I am going to tell him to move off the hill. This is a pretty crazy spot. I mean, assailing a phalanx that deep with soldiers that elite, that's extremely difficult to cut through for anybody. You need catapults. You need some kind of explosive device to be able to get through that. And there are actually, and I'll show you in a little bit, an explosive unit on the field right now for Mordor and for Gundabad that is going to be very, very devastating. And the Ologhai did get into a flanking position, charged into the back of my spearmen, and I'm going to charge into the back of the Ologhai, overlap that engagement, and punish them heavily for trying to flank around behind. And cavalry charges are great for killing trolls. Now, you might not kill like 5 or 6 models or kill the entire unit off a charge like you could with infantry units, but you hit them with a couple of charges and they're going to be in for a very, very rough day. More charges coming in from the Elder Pathfinders, charging into the Snow Trolls and some of those Scourge Raiders. Just keep cycle charging. You guys know in Medieval 2 mods, cavalry is absolutely insane. In 3rd Age, it was toned down, but this is 3rd Age Reforged, where some of these cavalry units have insane stats. And we need insane stats on this cavalry to win this battle. There's no other way. The cavalry is going to end up being the deciding factor one way or the other. If they don't do enough damage, we simply aren't going to be able to win. But so far, we have put the hurt on the Mordor and Gundabad Orcs, and right up the center, charging into a loose formation. Orc Archer right now, going to carry through that formation, do a ton of damage, and then quickly pull out. Now I have to be careful because the Black Numenorians and stuff are moving up, but these are the Witchers. I do not know what the lore for them is. It might be a completely made-up unit. I did some Google searching for them and I couldn't find anything about it. So if anybody knows what the Witchers are, definitely let me know. But they throw like flaming attacks. They're kind of like Nafatun, but much more devastating. They can do insane amounts of damage to big blocks of infantry, and they're going to start firing in now. So they might hit some of their Scourge Raiders, they might do some friendly fire damage, but hell, they don't really care. They're really evil, and they're going to do a lot of damage to my elf infantry as they engage. And I have to be very careful with my elven cavalry now, because a couple shots from those Witchers could completely devastate like that. Like one shot right there just killed about 3 models of my elk cavalry. They do have 2 hit points, but they've been fighting for a long time, so a lot of them have probably gotten their HP worn down, and I've got to be very, very careful. Now the Elven King's Guard are going to engage in melee. I'm out of ammunition with them. They've got these axes, beautiful looking weapons to engage with, and I'm actually going to get a little bit blobbed up, and I don't think I had seen the Witchers yet, because I've been focusing on other parts of the battle, and now that big blob of spearmen and the Elven King's Guard are going to get decimated very soon by those Witchers, so I'll be sure to try to catch that once they open up fire again. And now the Warg Riders are trying to spring their attack here, going to move up the center and engage. Now they have to be very wary of my Elder Pathfinders, because my Elk Cav will put the hurt on Warg Riders for sure. And I'm not sure that they actually want to make their Warg Riders be so isolated here. But oh, here comes the shots. Look at that. Oh man, that was crazy. That was like 20, 30 dead in a single shot from those Witchers. And now he's going to hammer an anvil. And there's going to be a little bit of friendly fire here. Warg Riders charging into the back of my King's Guard. And I'm going to try to overlap with some of my other archers that also ran out of ammunition. And look at that friendly fire. But also doing a ton of damage to my infantry there, which was blobbed up. So that might not have been the worst thing. Lost about 12, 15 models on his wargs, which is not good, but it's not the biggest deal. But he killed a bunch of my elven infantry, which is very hard to cut through. So might have actually been an okay trade there, although I know that the people we were playing with, Happy Meal and Penguin, were not happy about that engagement at all. They were very upset that they got friendly fire there. But that might not have been the worst thing ever, because he killed a bunch of my infantry that was blobbed up at the same time. He also could have just held off, not fired, and shot into the blob after the Warg Riders had hammered and anviled, but whatever. Anyway, so my Elder Pathfinder just charged with the Black Numenorians. That was the Nazgul unit. He's going to pull out because he does not want to lose his gen. Remember, if the Nazgul goes down, this game is completely over. The game will literally just end right then. But my troops on the west side have held admirably well at this choke point. Wave after wave of Gundabad Orcs keep crashing in to the killing zone. And I'm mostly out of ammunition, so I've had to commit some of my archers into melee. But the Sindar Blade Masters are going to do great over there. And in the center, things are looking very dire. But I am going to bring down the Warg General, which is not the biggest deal, because, again, I have to kill the Nazgul to automatically win the battle. But killing a general is never a bad thing. And I've completely eliminated one of their cavalry units. And they don't have very many of those cav units. So taking out the Black Numenorians, taking out the Warg Riders is definitely a big win for us. There are lots of dead in the center, though. Things are very dire over there. They're definitely going to break through. But Synn has a very defensible position right here, and breaking through that spear wall phalanx is going to be incredibly difficult for these Orcs of Gundabad and Mordor. So they might try to just avoid him and just collapse in on the remnants of my troops over in the center. And the Elder Pathfinders are still making their presence felt this late in the battle. They are worn down at this point. taken a bunch of losses, but those charges are so punishing. Even with only a handful, like a dozen of Elk Riders charging into melee, they can still dish out a crap load of damage. Look at this. It is complete carnage here in the center. And the Black Orcs of the mountains, the Ruardar Axemen, and the Witch Realm Hammer Guard have just cut a swath of destruction through my lines. Of course, it was also a trade-off in that they lost thousands of their own, but my line is definitely going to break in the center. Just a handful of elves making their last stand here before the swarms of Mordor and Gundabad Orcs manage to break through. Just little pockets of resistance left, and look at all those red cloaks. Look at all the dead in the center. Just absolutely insane scale of combat. Handful of Elder Pathfinders getting ready to charge in again. I will say our opponents did a great job of focusing down our cavalry. Yes, they've made a huge impact on the battle, but they would have done even more damage if our opponents didn't get all their range units to fire at our Elk Cavalry every time they ran into melee. And I didn't catch it too much on camera, but this is basically what was happening the entire time. When they got their archers up close to the combat, they managed to get 5 or 6 or 7 of their archer units to just all focus fire, which really whittled down the HP of our Elder Pathfinders and made it much more difficult for them to survive. Now some of the Woodland Sentinels are getting committed into melee. Those High Elf Spears, or the regular spears, not regular spears, the Silvan Elf Spears, I've played way too much Warhammer recently, are doing a great job of holding down the fort, and the elite troops are now getting committed. You can kind of tell when you're zoomed out whether a troop is elite just how black their color scheme is. The kind of the brown looking units are usually the crappy ones, and the more dark, sinister looking ones are usually much more elite, and they are definitely going to start cutting through the shield walls. But I'm actually surprised. Synn still has some ammunition at this point in the battle. I would have thought he was out at this point. That's a big range blob of enemy orcs getting ready to move up and start skirmishing. They probably still have a bunch of their ammunition left. Now over here, I think Capone just made a big mistake. He committed all of his forces over on this side. He hasn't blobbed up, which was good, which meant that I didn't do as much damage with my range units. But he definitely should have sent stuff over to the center of the battlefield to help cut through the center, and he could maybe be swarming in behind my troops at this point if he had sent his Warg Riders or some of his other stuff over there. He neglected to do that, and that means that his most elite troops are still fighting here in the choke point, and they've been fighting there for a very long time. Now, he will be able to break through this choke point because he's now committed his Witch Realm Hammer Guard and the Scourge Raiders and some of the more elite troops, and these guys are also going to make it into combat relatively soon, but his Warg Riders can't do anything because they haven't been committed. If he had just gone around behind with his cavalry, because now our cavalry is so depleted that those Warg Riders would be very well suited to dealing with stuff over in the middle of the engagement, I just think he would have had a more fun time. That could not have been fun for him. He's literally fought at that choke point for the entire battle, not really had much to micro at all, so I did feel bad for him, but I still think he could have committed troops to other parts of the battle to make it a bit more entertaining. Balance bar is about 50-50 at this point. We have brought it back. Battle's not even close to being over yet, but considering that we brought the balance bar more towards our favor, the more we get into the late game, the better it's looking for us. Now I am going to tell Synn to get off that hill relatively soon, because I think that if he stays on that hill for the entire battle, it's just going to be kind of boring, because that is an almost unassailable position with how elite the elf units are. I think that with what they have left, it probably wouldn't be very fun. But again, we have not won the battle yet. It's going to be very interesting when he comes down the hill, because then suddenly things open up. They have the opportunity to flank, hammer and anvil with their unused cavalry like the Warg Riders and the Black Numenorians. They would then have a chance to win the battle. But I think if Synn decided to camp on that hill for the rest of the battle, it probably would have no chance of going in Mordor's or Gundabad's favor. You can now see the Black Numenorians with those massive two-handed swords getting ready to enter combat with the Sindar Blade Masters, and that should be a very interesting engagement, so we'll try to keep an eye on that. And yeah, Synn is now going to stream down from the hill to make this battle more interesting as we get into the late stages of this game. Our cavalry is so beaten up at this point, but each of them have racked up 350, 400, 500 kills, made such a big impact on the battle, and it's been very nice to see those guys in action. They are brutal cavalry. And that is one of the things about the rebalance in this mod. I haven't seen what they're going to do with the price changes yet, but in terms of actual combat stats, elves are obviously insane. Just generally speaking, much less numerous. That's why we were outnumbered 3-1 in this battle. And the defensive position we took up has obviously been very instrumental in keeping us alive. If it was a more open battlefield, we would have just gotten swarmed and destroyed. But so far, we have held relatively well. Of course, the center has broken, but this could still go either way with some good Black Numenorian charges or Warg Riders in the late game. And you can see, finally, he has broken through over on this choke point. My Sindar Blade Masters are making their last stand, but they will drop soon, and that will allow him to pour in to the center part of this battlefield. But huge moment here. I had actually hidden the remnants of my cavalry in the woods, and the Quiet Wraith, the 7th of the 9, has been left in the back unsupported, and the tiny remnants of my Pathfinders are going to seize this opportunity to try to cut the head off the snake. Just a handful of elite warriors crashing headlong into the Black Numenorians, and I am going to strike down the Nazgul, and we are going to win the battle off that attack. Now, during the battle, I had no idea that was actually the enemy general. I just thought it was a Black Numenorian cavalry unit, and regardless, though, I'm going to bring down the general, and that will be the end of the battle. Now, look at these stats. The carnage that visited the borders of Mirkwood was crazy. 6,000 kills for my army, 4,000 for Synn, 10,000 enemy dead, just completely broken and bloodied. Many of our troops had over 300, 400, some even over 500 kills. Just really insane stuff. I think this scenario could be improved a bit if maybe one more choke point over on the west side was opened up, just to give that player a bit more to do. And it would have been even more interesting, I think, if Synn had come down from the hill sooner, because in a straight deathmatch at that point, when I killed the general, we were going to win anyway. I don't think they had enough troops or enough cavalry to just hammer away at the remnants of our troops. I think we were probably going to win. But it's tough, because when you're outnumbered by that much, it's really hard to gauge sometimes and keep the battle really close and interesting. But I think it probably would have benefited the game in general if he had come down from the hill just a bit sooner. But incredibly fun scenario nonetheless. Really enjoyed it. Seeing 16,000 troops fight to the death does not get old, and overall just had a great time. Now, Synn the Dark Cloud will be moving on to Beginning of the End Times to create some custom scenarios and battle maps there, so definitely keep your eye out for that. I'm very excited, and I hope you guys enjoyed this battle. It was really fun to commentate. Hope it was fun to watch as well. Indie Pride, signing out for now.